Thursday night Stardom Situm show. It is me, Jake Senholz, here for Flurry Sports. As always on Thursday nights, joining me is Coach Kevin Schroeder and Trevor Land. Guys, we got a lot to talk about in the world of football, not just in fantasy football this week. Of course, if you have not checked out Monkey Knife Fight yet, head on over to monkeyknifefight.com. Great partner of ours. Look around their website, see what you might be interested in. They are available in tons of states around the U.S. Different games, different contests, a ton of different stuff to get involved with. You can win 2 times your money, 5 times your money, all the way up to 20 times your money. Fantastic website over at monkeyknifefight.com. If you sign up and use the promo code FLURRY, that will get you a $5 automatic free $5, and then a 100% deposit match up to $50. If you sign up with promo code Flurry at monkeyknifefight.com, put in $50, you're gonna have $105 to play with. If you put in $25, you're gonna have $55 to play with. And you can do the rest of the math all the way up from $5 to $50. Check out monkeyknifefight.com, promo code Flurry. But we are talking mostly fantasy football tonight. But as I alluded to right off the top, a lot going on in the world of football itself. Looks like we might have ourselves another doubleheader of Monday Night Football. As I am seeing reports from, I saw it first from Benjamin Albright, who is out of Denver. He said the Broncos and Patriots probably going to play at 5:05 on Monday night, followed by the Chargers and Saints. And then I believe, and I know, Trevor, I think you have a feeling that the Titans are going to find a way to mess it up, but I believe the Titans are supposed to play on Tuesday. So we have 3 weekday games this week. Before we jump into fantasy here, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of these doubleheader Monday night games? Do you like it? Do you think it's something you could get used to, even maybe moving forward? COVID season or not. And what do you think Tuesday night football is going to look like?
Coach.
Well, I love it. It's kind of fun to have a doubleheader look forward to on a Monday night. I felt that the Chiefs Patriots game, it would have been nice if Cam were playing, because it was a little one-sided there, but it was nice. The only thing that was difficult was having to stay up late to watch the Packers finish off their game. I think that one wrapped. It was after 11, maybe 11:30 or so when that one wrapped. So, but it's nice to have a Monday night doubleheader to look forward to. If there's only 2 teams playing, you might or might not have a player going in fantasy, but if you have 4 teams playing, you have a pretty good shot at having someone that likely is going to decide a game for you. So I think it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it too. The best part about Sundays is all those games back to back to back. So having 2 games back to back Monday feels great. Like Coach said, though, it did start getting a little late, but I'll take that hit for sure on Tuesday. As for Tuesday Night Football, look, I'll take as much as I can get. I don't know if that's sustainable for the common viewer watching football, how many days a week, but for me, I'll take as much as I can get.
Yeah. I mean, if you're giving me football on over 50% of the days of the week, I mean, we're talking Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. I'll take that as a football fan anytime. Tuesday football, I don't think I could see it becoming a regular thing. I think that'd be a little strange, but as an occasional treat, sure, why not? But as far as the doubleheader on Monday, I honestly think it wouldn't be the most terrible idea going forward. If that's your idea, you can schedule it out so that the early game is playing in the East, the later game playing in the West. You could make it work with the time zones, make it so that fans don't have to stay up so late. You could get 2 different networks involved. Like you said, it might make Mondays for fantasy a little bit more exciting. I honestly don't think a doubleheader on Sunday would be the worst thing ever. You move, obviously, every week there's always a ton of games in that noon slot. You move one of those noon slot games to a 3:00 slot, and then play 2 on Monday night. I think maybe it's something that the NFL could consider moving forward. Of course, there's a lot of other things at play as far as scheduling, networks wanting to do it, all that stuff. But I think a doubleheader on Monday nights, or at least maybe not even every Monday night, but do it 4, 5, 6 times a year. I think it'd be, it adds a little bit more excitement. Everybody's always looking forward to that Monday night game, but if you can have 2 Monday night games, that's even better. So let's get into fantasy football. It is 6:15 already, or almost 6:15 already, so we are only an hour away from the Thursday Night Football kickoff. So we will try and touch on everything we've got to talk about in that game kind of early on in the stream here. As always, we're just going to lean heavily on Coach's Start-Sit article, which can be found on flurrysports.org, especially if you want to follow along with us here tonight, or you want to reiterate anything or check out anything in writing that we talk about tonight. And then I've got a few names just to throw out there as well, and a few real life situations. As far as my fantasy team goes, I am actually playing against Trevor in our Flurry Sports Vampire League this week, so we will get to all that in the upcoming hour. Well, let's just dive right into the article. And you know what? I said we're going to talk about tonight's game a little bit right off the bat, so I'm just going to pose this question to you, Coach. I asked you privately on our Slack chat, kind of just made a little joke last week, but I said, is it time to stop doubting Tom Brady? Has he earned his way off of your sit? I know you had him for 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row, he went out there, had pretty good games. Last week, 5 touchdowns. And I want to ask about Tom Brady anyway this week, because it's either Brady or somebody off the waiver wire for me in one of my leagues this week. So give me a quick overview on just what you've seen out of Tom Brady these last couple weeks, if he has, proven himself to you a little bit. And then I'm going to throw a couple names out there, and I want to know what you guys think, if I should start Brady or maybe consider one of these other guys.
Yeah, it's funny. After we chatted last week there, this week I was sitting down to look at the article and the matchups last night, and I was looking at the tough matchup. Tom Brady, again, has a tough matchup this week. The Bears' pass defense is pretty tough against quarterbacks, and it does look like the path to success against them is through the ground game, which I just saw that Leonard Fournette is active tonight. He went from doubtful to active, so that kind of takes the wind out of Ronald Jones's sails as well. But as far as Brady tonight, it's a tough matchup, but like I mentioned, I'm done doubting him. He's the GOAT, and there's nothing nothing that he can't do, obviously. So it's not a great matchup. I'd be interested to hear the names that you have that you could consider instead of him, but just know that he's capable of going out and throwing another 5 touchdowns tonight, and it wouldn't surprise anyone.
I think I might be the only one in the fantasy football realm that actually thinks this could be one of the best matchups for Brady all year, which seems odd. But I look at the Bears and who they've played before. They played Stafford without Golladay, Daniel Jones, this horrible Falcons team, and the Colts. I haven't seen them play a quarterback of Brady's caliber. Evans is a go. Scotty Miller, I believe, is also a go. This Bears offense won't be doing much, especially in the run game with this Tampa Bay defense. All that adds up to me, Brady being on the field longer, more points possibilities. But hey, who knows? I've definitely.
So you guys are on both sides here tonight. Brady, it is really tough because, obviously he's still without Godwin. Chicago does rank second against the opposing quarterbacks as far as fantasy points allowed this year. But like you just said, Trevor, they played subpar quarterbacks for, I'd say, at least obviously Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford, not subpar quarterbacks in their own right. But as far as fantasy and their success of that week, they are towards the bottom of the board right now. So Chicago has had that benefit. Now that Leonard Fournette is back, which I didn't know either, because the last time I looked, actually I'm still looking right now at Leonard Fournette, and he's still projected 0 points. So obviously ESPN behind the ball a little bit there, updating their projections. But Brady, I don't know. Coming off such a big week, he's got both active running backs, a tough defense. I don't know. It's a tough matchup for me right now, and that's why I wanted to pose this question, because my other quarterback is Matthew Stafford, who is obviously on a bye this week. So here's my choices. The top 3 available quarterbacks. If not Tom Brady this week, I could go Jimmy G, Teddy Bridgewater, or Justin Herbert. Now, I don't love any of those selections. Jimmy G just now coming back, still kind of beat up. his pass catchers are still kind of beat up. Nick Mullins, it looked less than impressive last week. And obviously Nick Mullins is not Jimmy G, but, is Jimmy G going to step in after a few weeks off and just light it up? I don't know. That kind of gives me hesitation. Teddy Bridgewater is in a pretty decent matchup this week. I think that there's going to be a lot of points scored either way, but Mike Davis has been going off. And a couple of the Panthers pass catchers have been less than impressive. And then Justin Herbert had a big week last week, 31 points, but he's just a rookie, and he's going up against a very experienced Saints defense at home in October, where the Saints have not failed to cover a game. They haven't failed to cover the spread in almost 5 years. So the Saints are daunting in the month of October. So I'm looking at 4 quarterbacks here, and I just really don't know what to do. There's huge pluses and minuses for all these guys. Do you think, Coach, I should consider anybody, any of those 3 over Brady, or should I just realize he's the GOAT, realize that even if chips are stacked against him, he's still going to find a way to do it?
So one name that sticks out at me there, a name that I included in the start this week, is Teddy Bridgewater. And I found out an interesting nugget, and I'll just kind of go over some of the numbers I found out as I was looking at Bridgewater here this week. Trivia question. The Falcons have played 4 games this year. There's only one quarterback one team of quarterbacks that has not put up 30 points against the Falcons, rather. They have played the Seahawks, Cowboys, Bears, and Packers. Only one of those team quarterbacks have not put up 30.
Well, that was the Bears, right?
No, it's actually Aaron Rodgers last week, and he put up 29.6.
Oh, as far as okay.
And the only reason he didn't put up more was because the Packers pretty much were running clock for most of the fourth quarter there. Even the Bears managed to put up, I think they put up 30 points some. So it was Trubisky got 12 against them, and Foles got 18 against them. So this Falcons defense is dead last in the league against quarterbacks. They're atrocious. They've given up 2 number 1 weeks for quarterbacks and a number 3 week for quarterback. So that would be they gave up a number 1 week to Russell Wilson, a number 1 week to Dak Prescott, a number 3 week to Aaron Rodgers. And then, Trubisky, if he would have played the whole game, could have very well finished as a top 5 quarterback against them. So Teddy's coming off his best game of the year. He had 27.2 last week. I like him this week. I like him in DFS. He's going to be cheap. And I think that stacking him with like a DJ Moore and counting on a bounce back there, that might be a nice low-owned stack. But as far as the names that you threw out, that one's the one that stuck out at me as the guy that I would lean to.
And we can dive a little bit deeper into him. As you said, he is one of the opening names in your article. So if you have any further thoughts on Teddy Bridgewater, or Trevor, if you have anything else you want to offer up on Bridgewater, we can just dive right in to the article. But before you answer my prompt here, Trevor, I just also want to throw out there that Brady is going against the second-ranked defense. Whether those numbers are skewed or not, all 3 of these guys, they are playing against the 26th ranked defense in Garoppolo, the 32nd ranked defense in Teddy Bridgewater, as you just said, Coach, and then the 28th ranked defense for Justin Herbert. So all of these defenses in the bottom 7 of the in the league, whereas Brady is playing the second ranked defense. Does that make you favor any one of these guys any more than Brady after knowing that, Trevor?
Outside of Bridgewater, I would stick with Brady. But Bridgewater, you can't deny it. You really can't. This Falcons defense is terrible. And it's bad enough as it is, and they just keep losing guys on top of that. This team, they're about 2 guys away from being a high school JV team at this point with all the injuries. It's ridiculous. And Teddy, he kind of reminds me of Tyrod Taylor in the sense that he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. So if I'm looking at a guy playing a bad defense and he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, I'm not too worried about interceptions. All the signs are pointing to a good start. And hey, like I said, I love Brady this week, but if Bridgewater is available, which I'm a little surprised with this matchup, you got to go Teddy.
Well, there, as you were talking, I just picked him up. I just entered him in the lineup. If I watch, if we get done with this stream and I turn the game on and I watch Brady throw another 4 or 5 touchdowns, it's going to be a pain-filled night. I will tell you that. But I was kind of leaning Teddy Bridgewater as well. I brought him up on the pickup show that I hosted on Tuesday. I said, hey, Teddy's only rostered in 12% of leagues going into this week. He's worth a shot. He obviously has gained. He's all the way up to 30% now rostered, so he's well over doubled, I'm guessing, because of performance and matchup this week. But I brought him up on Tuesday. I've been eyeing him up all week. And, I haven't talked myself out of Brady, but I think I talked myself, and you guys have talked me into Bridgewater probably having the better performance. So we'll see. If Brady can cap out at maybe 2 touchdowns tonight, maybe 3, then I won't be so worried that I made the wrong choice. But I do have a bet tonight as well. Tom Brady over 1.5 touchdown passes. So he needs to get at least 2 and then just quit right there. And that'll make me a happy man. So let's dive back into it. Oh, and by the way, it's fitting that I had to drop Leonard Fournette in order to pick up Teddy Bridgewater. I like my other running backs. I have no qualms about dropping Leonard Fournette, really. So, yeah. There we go. Thank you for the help setting my lineup tonight. So the other starting quarterback that we did not touch on already, and again, if you want to expound on Bridgewater anymore at all, feel free. Otherwise, we have Ben Roethlisberger versus the Eagles. Deontay Johnson is another guy who I have been going back and forth on this week. Ben Roethlisberger, I think, is a great play almost every week, just because he's Big Ben, chucks the ball down the field, looks good this year. He is your number 1 start for the week, Coach. Tell us a little bit more, besides for the fact that the Eagles kind of stink and the Pittsburgh Steelers are really good. What else do you think Ben's got going for him this week?
Yeah, so as I was looking at the stats here, it's a perfect example of when you delve down into and look at matchups, how stats can kind of be deceiving. The Eagles' pass defense actually has only given up 17.7 fantasy points a game, which is actually pretty good. It's actually one of the better defenses in the league. But then you look and you kind of delve into that a little bit, and you see that one week they played Dwayne Haskins, and he had 12.8 against them. And then last week on the Sunday night game, Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard combined to put up 13.5 on them. And C.J. Beathard, late in the fourth quarter, I think he might have only thrown 1 or 2 incomplete passes as he was marching the 49ers up and down the field on them. They also gave up 24 to Goff and 20 to Joe Burrow already this year. So you got Big Ben at home. You got his receivers are both going to play. So he's got Juju and Deontay out on the field this week. I think you're looking at a guy who will definitely put in quarterback 1 numbers this week. And consensus ranking has him at number 14 this week based on what looks like on the surface tough matchup against Philadelphia. So I think he's for surefire start this week, and wouldn't hesitate to use him.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I brought it up last night in one of our streams here too. Ben Roethlisberger is pissed because he felt like he was getting into a rhythm, and the Titans, obviously we know what happened with them. And now he's playing an Eagles team where he's got, Juju, he's got Deontay Johnson, and on top of that, he's got Eric Ebron. And this is an Eagles team that, Eric Ebron is no George Kittle, but Kittle absolutely gashed them, embarrassed them. I could see Ebron doing the same thing. He's got a lot of weapons. James Conner should be fully rested. I see Roethlisberger doing big things as well.
Well, there you go. Ben Roethlisberger, a solid start against the Eagles this week. And, of course, as always, if you have actually, I was just about to say, if you have questions, as always, throw them in the comments section. But we are not on Sportscaster this week, so tweet them at us. I believe we are on a live stream on Twitter as well. So tweet them at us, throw them in the comments on there. Zach is producing the show for us. Our fearless leader, Zach Brunner, takes his beautiful face off the camera and is working behind the scenes to make sure everything goes smoothly for us and for you. So tweet your questions at him, throw them in the chat, and he will send them our way if you have any other quarterbacks or anybody else that you want to talk about this week. Teddy Bridgewater, we already talked about a little bit, so let's move on to the sits. This week we have a couple of guys on the opposite ends of their careers in Joe Burrow and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Of course, Joe Burrow just getting started. Ryan Fitzpatrick towards the end of his career, but still hanging on, still putting up numbers, but probably not going to do it this week, or has less of a chance to do it this week against the 49ers. Coach, let's start with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Why are you benching him this week, even though the Niners defense is still a little bit banged up and injured yet?
Yeah, so Ryan Fitzpatrick's had a nice run. He currently the quarterback 9 on the season, and he's put up just about 24 points over the last 3 weeks. This week, though, he's going across the country, going to play the 49ers. Tough matchup. The 49ers lost to the Eagles in a tough way on Sunday night. They're only allowing 18.2 fantasy points a game. Don't like the matchup. Definitely, Ryan Fitzpatrick is very capable of delivering in garbage time, as he's done throughout his career, but just not liking the matchup here for him in San Francisco. San Fran coming off a tough loss. And then also there's been an increase in the buzz for Tua, and I could see an interception or two, and I could see Tua getting on the field. And like I wrote in the article, I'd prefer to be a week ahead of it and not a week behind it when Tua finally gets on the field. So I'd find another option instead of Fitzpatrick this week. I just don't like the matchup, and with the clamoring for Tua in the background there, I think that his time as a starter is coming to an end.
Yeah, Fitz magic is a real thing, but it's asking quite a lot of him against San Francisco, especially, I'm a big Myles Gaskin fan. I think this could definitely be a down week for him. And I think Gaskin's a big part of not only the running offense, obviously, but also the passing game. And if they struggle to get any run going, that's going to go to the passing as well. I think Fitzpatrick is going to struggle for sure against the San Francisco defense.
And one thing we haven't seen out of Fitzpatrick yet that we're used to seeing out of, his early season runs and his Fitzmagic type runs is just the touchdown volume. Usually he'll have a game where he gets, he throws 3 to 5 touchdowns or throws a few touchdowns and runs for another one. Has not done that yet this season. He does have a rushing touchdown in each of the last 2 games. To go along with, one of them he had 0 passing touchdowns. The other one he had 2 passing touchdowns. So there was a game in there where he had 3 touchdowns, but the kicker with that one was he only threw for 160 yards that game. So he finds the end zone 3 times, only has 160 yards, still ends up with 25 points, which is not bad. I mean, he's cleared the 20-point threshold the last 3 weeks, but we'll really see what he's made out of this week against San Francisco. I personally believe and have bought into the idea, and I've been saying it for weeks and weeks now, that if we're going to see Tua, I think it's going to be in week 10. Maybe you throw him in a week earlier against Arizona, depending on what they look like at the time. But week 10, and I've said this on other shows, so I won't harp on it too long. You play the New York Jets, who are bad. They have been bad. Then you get a bye, and then the next week you play the New York Jets again. So I just think, it's a perfect way to ease Tua in. You can see how he does, assess him that first week against the Jets, and then you can watch the tape Watch what he did. Have a bunch of learning opportunities, and then you get to play that same exact defense the following week. That almost never happens for any quarterback or any NFL team playing the same team back-to-back weeks. Let alone your rookie, who I don't know if you're worried about him or injury-wise or performance-wise. I'm not sure, but I think that's the spot that we might finally see Tua, especially if Fitzpatrick doesn't rattle off a few more wins before that. Gets a little harder, the schedule does, on the back end after that. But, I mean, what a perfect time to assess your young quarterback there between weeks 10 and 12. So I don't necessarily think we see Fitzpatrick sat down this week, even if he has a subpar performance against San Francisco. I think he'll have another shot in the upcoming weeks just because that's how I've seen it all season long. Of course, as Trevor said, though, I've been wrong before, so we'll see how it plays out. Either way, I don't like Fitzpatrick as I don't love Fitzpatrick as a matchup this week. I definitely think there are other quarterbacks available who will get you more points. As I said, he's broken the 20-point threshold, and he's done it against some decent defenses, but might be a drop-off type week for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Joe Burrow, on the other hand, has been a man who has impressed through the first 4 weeks. He's stood in there. He's made the throws. He's taken a beating. I mean, Joe Burrow has looked the part. He's looked, like a man out there, like a true a quarterback. Against the Ravens this week, though, probably not the greatest fantasy start. I don't know if anybody out there has been starting Joe Burrow on a consistent basis anyhow. But playing the Ravens this week, that's always a tough matchup. Coach, what do you think? What have you thought about Burrow so far this season, and why is that differ, or how does that differ from what you see out of him this week?
Yeah, Burrow is coming into the draft this year. I thought he was a can't-miss prospect. Everything that you've heard about him coming out of LSU, I've heard where he was in coaches' meetings, and everyone said he was the smartest guy in the room as far as football IQ. You watched him at LSU just like a marionette back there, just working the offense there, just like a puppet master, and the numbers he put up at LSU against SEC quality defenses, he was a can't miss prospect, and he's looked the part. He's the only thing that worries me a bit about him is he's taken some hits. Their offensive line is not very good, and I don't want to see him going the way of David Carr of the Texans, who took 70-some sacks his rookie year and just was always a little gun shy after that. That's the only thing I'd worry about with him. But he's and the other thing too is I think sometimes he's taken a few shots this year when he's run that maybe he should get down just a little quicker to avoid those. So as long as he can stay healthy, though, he's a can't miss player. That being said, Cincinnati's the last time they've been playoff relevant is quite some time here. But
Joe Burrow was a young man back in.
Yeah. Yes, he was. So I've been really impressed with him thus far, but it hasn't surprised me at all.
Yeah. I mean, there was some of that leaked audio. I don't know if some people saw it on the hot mics on the field, or Burrow said, "I'm not taking these hits anymore." And he shouldn't. He gets hit enough in the pocket. I loved him too coming out of college. I mean, he was doing some things. I was like, wow. I mean, this dude's ready now. And these are his first 3 games. He didn't have a training camp either. He is doing amazing. With that being said, though, this Ravens defense is legit. I'm sure they see the blood in the water with the Cincy offensive line. I can see them bringing the house, especially with Mixon. Outside of last week, he was phenomenal, but outside of last week, not really giving owners the production they wanted. And boy, it only takes one hit with quarterbacks, unfortunately. I obviously hope that doesn't happen, but this Ravens defense is relentless, and they're going to get their good hits on them, unfortunately, for Burrow.
Yeah. Coach, you got something else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just in regards to the matchup this week, I found another example of kind of how numbers are a little bit misleading until you look a little bit more closely at them. And going into this week here, the Ravens are giving up 21.4 fantasy points a game to quarterbacks, which is actually kind of middle of the road. But then you look and you see that Patrick Mahomes dropped 40 on them. And then other than that, they're giving up 15.3 fantasy points a game. Now, Patrick Mahomes is otherworldly. So when he drops 40 points on your defense, he can do that on anyone. But I don't think Joe Burrow is quite in that class yet. I do think the potential is there for some garbage time results, but certainly wouldn't want to bet on that. It's not something that I like to roll out in a lineup as a guy who you're banking on garbage production.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. ESPN, I think, has them 24th, which I didn't think that they were that low against opposing quarterbacks. But unless Patrick Mahomes really skewed those numbers, but I'm looking here at their defensive numbers, and outside that week against Kansas City, they allowed 6 points, 16 points, and 17 points. And 2 out of the last 4 weeks, they've scored a defensive touchdown. So this unit, in fantasy-wise, is doing just fine, even if they are allowing quarterbacks to throw decent yards against them in real-life football. But again, 2 defensive touchdowns in the last 4 weeks, holding teams to 17 points or below 3 out of the last 4 weeks. I mean, none of these things are screaming start the young quarterback, no matter how good or how promising Joe Burrow's future is. So I definitely think, as I said, I don't know how many people are out there starting Joe Burrow on a weekly basis anyhow, but do not start this week. That would be my recommendation to you. Those are quarterbacks as we kind of flew through those, actually. Again, if you have any further questions, want to know about any other players, please feel free to tweet us. Not quite sure right now, as I can't see how it looks on the viewer's end. But if our Twitter handles are not out there, I am at Sentinels on Sport. Coach Kevin Schroeder is, I believe, at Schroeder Coach, and Trevor is at Trevorland2. So it's at Sentinels on Sports, at Trevorland2, at Schroeder Coach. Send us your questions, send us your comments and concerns about anything that we talk about, and we will address those right away. Moving on to running backs, we're going to start with a guy who's probably been living his fantasy life on most people's benches so far, and it's too bad because they've missed out on a couple opportunities for some big points. Of course, we were talking about Antonio Gibson, the running back of the Washington football team. He's playing against the Rams this week. The Rams had a dud of a game last week against the Giants. Final score was a little misleading just because of the turnovers at the end and the quick touchdowns by the Rams at the end, but the Giants kept that one close. Now the Rams play another subpar team in the Washington football team, but Washington has players that have been able to produce fantasy-wise, and the Rams have shown that they have the capability to play down to their competition. All these things mean good things for Antonio Gibson this week. He scored in the 20s last week, if I remember correctly. I could pull that up right here quick, unless one of you guys have it. The exact number, I have it right here, 22.8. So coming off a good week, I'm guessing the best week. Yeah, by far the best week he's ever had. Now he plays the Rams. Rams not always an easy defensive matchup because of guys like Aaron Donald and other studs that they've got on their team. But I do like Antonio Gibson this week. And like I said, he's probably been living on most people's benches for a majority of the year. Coach, you agree it's time to let him fly, let him go, put him in your starting lineup this week?
Yeah, and now that we've got the buys going on here, and I too am skeptical that just like Trevor said, I'm skeptical that the Titans game's actually going to go off on Tuesday night. The running backs are starting to get pretty thinned out here now, and Antonio Gibson, his workload's increased each of the weeks. He's scored a touchdown in 3 straight games now. Kyle Allen's going to be starting at quarterback this week. I can see the football team trying to get the run established here to try and ease Kyle Allen into the starting role there. And then I also saw that the Rams have given up 19 fantasy points per game to running backs on the year. And then every team they've played they've given up at least an RB2 performance too. So that was a a nugget that I found there that I thought was interesting. And Gibson had 17 touches last week, which is his new high. I think he's a solid play this week for a RB2, and I think he's got RB1 upside.
Yeah, I like Gibson too, Coach. Although I will disagree with you, I'm much more of a fan on week 4. How you called them, the Washington Generics. That is, however, how for the rest of the time until they get a new name, that's their name for me.
I like it.
But yeah, I mean, Kyle Allen, he comes from a Carolina offense that was very running back heavy, and I can see that same thing here. Ron Rivera is the coach as well. Who knows? Maybe they try to get that going for him with his first reps with this team so far. And like you pointed out as well, Gibson, 17 touches. That's definitely noteworthy. And especially as an RB2, he can definitely give you RB1 upside. So definitely start him against the Rams.
All right, cool. I just got a message from Zach that we have some viewer interaction. So we do have a couple start-sit scenarios that we will get to. I think we can talk about those after we finish up the running backs here. So thank you to those of you who sent in the questions. It's at James Jacob and at Orlando V14. Please keep them coming. And if others of you have questions as well, send them on in. But we are going to finish up talking about the running backs first. The next two, by the way, as I said, I like Antonio Gibson as a play this week as well. Everything you just said about the Rams defense and what they've allowed mixed with Kyle Allen now being the starter and the fact they're probably not going to go whip the ball around because they weren't able to do that with Dwayne Haskins. And Kyle Allen proved he could throw last year in Carolina, but again, week 1 of his new starting job with a new team, I don't think they're going to ask him to toss the ball around the yard too much, so I like Antonio Gibson as well. I did feel bad, though, for Dwayne Haskins this week. I think it was just today maybe or yesterday he tweeted out that his dog died, and I was like, man, that's a sad week. You lose your starting position, or you lose your starting job, and your dog dies. That's a rough week. So I do feel bad for Dwayne Haskins, and I think he's got a future in the league, whether it's a backup or a starter. I do think he has the potential to come back. He's just young. He was forced into a starting role on a really bad team. Didn't really have great coaching last year. I think he's got a future. To what level and where at, I'm not quite sure, but all the best towards Dwayne Haskins in the future. Next two players what's that, Trevor?
Real quick before we go on, just a notification here from ESPN. The Broncos-Patriots game originally scheduled for Sunday will be played Monday night due to COVID-19 positives.
There you go. As we said that right off the top of the show, so we're breaking news before ESPN. But I do have to give the credit there to Benjamin Albright. Again, he's a Denver-based guy, and he always knows everything ahead of time. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter. So I give him a shout-out as well. So, yeah, it's official, a doubleheader again for you football fans on Monday night. The next two players that we're going to be talking about are both playing tonight. Game kicks off in about a half an hour, so we should probably talk about them right now. Anyways, Coach, as you said right off the beginning, Ronald Jones, the second, maybe a little bit of wind taken out of his sails because Leonard Fournette is now active. But, I mean, I don't put a ton of stake into a guy who is listed as doubtful all the way up until an hour before the game, unless this is a Bruce Arians, mind game, and they knew they were going to activate him and just waited till the last possible second. I guess that could be, but Ronald Jones actually had a pretty big week last week. I know about 2 weeks ago, I proclaimed, I'm done with Ronald Jones. I'm done with him for the season, blah, blah, blah. Well, he comes out, puts up 18.8 points against the Chargers. And now he's got a matchup against the Bears, who, again, are a good defense, but we already talked about everything with, Brady not having his pass catchers and them being good against the quarterbacks and pass catchers. So more leaning a run game this week for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I still think that Ronald Jones is still a quality starter this week. I think he's still going to have a majority of the touches. I don't really think Leonard Fournette is going to do anything special this week. As I just said earlier, I dropped him for Teddy Bridgewater just now. Do you still like Ronald Jones as a start tonight, even with Fournette active, or are you second guessing yourself here?
Yeah, so Ronald Jones has been a regular in the column. He's been, I think I've listed him as a sit 3 times now, including last week when I listed him and Fournette both as sits. When I found out later on in the week that Fournette was out, I actually tweeted that Ronald Jones would be a solid start last week, and he was. With Fournette on the field tonight, I tend to think what you just said, that doubtful all the way up until game time, unless we're not aware of something going on. I have a hard time seeing Fournette being a big factor tonight. So I still think Ronald Jones is probably going to get 70% of the work tonight. I think it's a slight downgrade to Jones, just because there is that chance that, like in week 2, Fournette kind of took over mid-game. And, the big thing is if Ronald Jones holds onto the ball and holds up his end as far as pass blocking, he's due for a good game. If he does drop a fumble or does allow Brady to get sacked, all bets are off, right? But I think he drops a little bit, but I do think he's still in this week with 2 teams on bye and the very questionable Titans game coming up. I still think he's an RB2 this week.
And the big thing is injuries. All these guys are injured, and he's obviously not an RB1, but as an RB2, I mean, we don't really have bodies to be too picky about RB2 anyways. And I don't think Fournette's going to be at 100% either. I question that. I think he's more of an emergency option. So, yeah, fire him up.
The other interesting thing, too, is, I don't know how much stake you put in this, but after watching Brady for so many years and watching it happen to players even like Julian Edelman, if you don't make plays, if Brady sets you up to make a play and you don't make that play, he's going to shun you. He's not going to look your way. He's going to make you, regret dropping the ball, learn from your mistakes before he trusts you again. And I thought that's exactly what was going to happen for Jones last week after he dropped 3 passes, but yet Brady kept going back to him. I don't know if that was just a lack of options or if that shows that Brady actually, trusts him or likes him a little bit more than public perception, but he did end up with 6 receptions last week to go along with 20 touches of the football on the ground. So I think the volume is still going to be there this week, even if Leonard Fournette, I don't see Leonard Fournette touching the ball more than 10 times, maybe not even that many. So I think the volume is still there. And I think Brady showed something by going back to Jones last week, even after those consecutive drops and 3 total drops. So, I like him as a play this week as well. I'm sitting here right now trying to play around, trying to figure out how I can get him into my lineup. And now that we've talked about both of these guys, I guess I will propose this to you. Everything is set in stone for me except my flex. On the bench, I currently have Antonio Gibson and Ronald Jones, who we just finished talking about, both as starters this week. And then I have Devontae Parker as another flex option as well. Devontae Parker has looked good all season, coming off a big week last week. I can only start one of these guys. Just real quickly, off the top of your head, is it Jones, Gibson, or Parker? Who should I roll with this week? Trevor?
Gibson.
Yeah, I think I would roll with Gibson as well. Parker has been solid, just based on the matchup, though, going into San Fran. And with Fournette now being active, I think that Gibson probably has the highest floor, and I would say also does have the highest ceiling of those 3.
And luckily for me, both of them play on Sunday, so I don't have to make my choice tonight because I'm not going to roll with Ronald Jones. He was probably my 3rd choice anyway, but if both of you had said Jones, maybe I could have been talked into it, but I don't have to worry about that until Sunday now. So there you go, Ronald Jones. Lock him in as a starter if it suits you and your lineup tonight. Probably will not be disappointed. Want to jump down to David Montgomery versus the Buccaneers. tonight as well. If you're following along on the article, we skipped over Myles Gaskin. We will come right back to him. But David Montgomery obviously playing tonight against the Buccaneers. And this is where it comes into play, me versus Trevor in the Vampire League. And for those of you who don't know, Vampire League, you have to roll all season long with the players that you drafted. And somehow I only ended up with one backup running back, and that backup running back is David Montgomery. So Aaron Jones not playing this week. I am forced to play David Montgomery. I have no other choice. So I personally am hoping you are dead wrong on this one, Coach, but I am afraid you won't be. I am very afraid that you won't be.
Hey, I don't want to hear it. I had Saquon Barkley, okay? I don't want to hear it.
Oh, that's rough. That's rough.
That is.
Especially in a league like that. So let me pull up the Vampire League here quick. So it is me against Trevor. I mean, pretty even lineups across the board, but again, I am forced to have David Montgomery. He's got Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs going, so still two pretty good running backs there. You're not in the worst of position, Trevor. But I hope for a big night for David Montgomery. Don't know if it's going to happen or not. Buccaneers defense, pretty good overall. They were the difference makers last week. Obviously, you could say, how can you say that with Brady throwing 5 touchdown passes? Well, for the most of the first half, Brady did not have many touchdown passes. The offense did not look good. It was because of a turnover deep in the opposing zone by the Buccaneers defense that caused a 10-point swing, brought the Buccaneers within 10 points instead of trailing by about 21, 24 points, somewhere in there heading into halftime. Monster play by the Buccaneers defense. And David Montgomery just has not gotten going. And the Bears offense overall, especially with Nick Foles last week, just really has not been going. So my hopes are high for David Montgomery because they have to be, but in reality, they are not very high. Coach, you have him as a sit. Talk us through David Montgomery a little bit more.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this right now, and the Buccaneers are on the season giving up 16.2 fantasy points per game to running backs, and that includes they had a matchup against Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey earlier in the year. They both those two running backs got their numbers as they do against everyone. However, I did mention too. Interestingly enough, they did end the afternoon for Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler early in the game. So tough run defense. In Montgomery's, defense, he did log 50 out of 59 snaps last week. Tariq Cohen being out led to him also getting a career high in targets last week. He had 6 targets. In addition to 10 carries for 27 yards. So he's going to get volume. He's going to end up with 15 to 18 touches. The Buccaneers defense is tough. However, when I'm looking at these running back rankings as far as with some of the injuries and such, as far as the guys below him, and kind of even above him, he's going to get a fair amount of work. So I would say kind of guys that would be above him. I would rather start Josh Kelly. I would rather start Kenyon Drake, Melvin Gordon. And I'd put Montgomery kind of down in the right below that RB2 cutoff.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Buccaneers. In my paid league, I had McCaffrey and Eckler, so I have a score to settle with these guys.
You're just full of spite tonight.
Hey, man, Tanyan put up 33 on me Monday night. That's a different story. But this Buccaneers defense, they're really good last year. They're still pretty good this year. I don't think the Bears with Foles or Trubisky, whoever plays if one does bad. I don't think the passing offense can take that much pressure off the run game where the Buccaneers, have to respect the pass, and that opens up the floodgates for Montgomery. I don't see that, and I see them playing from behind, so I think that hurts Montgomery even more. So, yeah, I think he misses that cutoff for running back too.
And as I mentioned, I'm cheering for David Montgomery just because I have to, but I don't love him overall at all this year. He's just, since coming into the league, has been a slow starter. Really, really high hopes. The Bears organization and Bears fans alike obviously were ecstatic about bringing a guy like that in. They let Jordan Howard go after years of success in Chicago because they had such high hopes for him. And Montgomery has not been, he's not been a bust, but he also has not been that impressive, and he hasn't been a guy that you can, certainly not a guy that you can lock in to a weekly starting position as far as fantasy goes. I would avoid him this week as well for all of the reasons that you guys just listed, and then some probably. And if you did ask us a question, if you were one of those two questions, James Jacobs and Orlando, we're just going to talk about one more guy, and then we will get to your questions. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging around before we get to them. We have one last guy to talk about in Myles Gaskin. He is playing the 49ers this week. I don't have a huge opinion on Myles Gaskin. I honestly didn't look at him a lot before this stream. I don't have him in any of my leagues, so I am going to defer to you guys on Myles Gaskin here. Coach, it's your article, so why don't you start us off? Why is he your sit this week against the 49ers?
Yeah, so Myles Gaskin's been, I wrote, he's been a RB2 in 2 out of 4 games this year, and he's been a pleasant surprise, I guess, as far as Dolphins running back. But this week he's going on the road to the 49ers, and they're giving up 10.8 fantasy points per game, which is by far the lowest in the league. In addition to that, they've also the high that they've given up on the year is 14.5 fantasy points a game. With running backs, you can sometimes hope for that goal line touchdown. David Montgomery, you might get a goal line touchdown tonight. Myles Gaskin doesn't get the goal line carries for the Dolphins. That's Howard. So to me, I wouldn't start Gaskin. I think there's better options even in this limited week. I think it's too tough of a matchup, and he won't have the opportunity at touchdown to bail him out as well.
I would like to claim myself as the start of the Myles Gaskin fan club immediately after one. I've been high on him. But yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. This 49ers defense is legit. And like you said, without those goal line carries, those are almost all going to Howard. I think he already has 3 touchdowns this year in the first one each of the first 3 weeks. They throw Breida in there for passing downs every once in a while. So, without that, hey, maybe he could get a touchdown aspect. It's really a guy I'd rather stay away from too. As much as I love him, I got to sit him this week.
So there you go. As I said, I have really no expert words about Gaskin, but the two of you seem to know exactly what you're talking about. So take their word for it. Myles Gaskin probably going to have a tough time against the 49ers this week. Now, before we get to wide receivers, I do want to get to those questions that we were promised. Let's start with a little bit easier one. It is just a straight up, do we start Antonio Gibson or do we start Justin Jefferson? Obviously, there's been a lot of love for Antonio Gibson on this show already today, but Justin Jefferson has proved himself, has been the highlight of that very, very down and very disappointing Vikings team this year. Not disappointing for Packers fans like me, but disappointing for those people who picked them to be at the top of the NFC North, and of course for the entire state of Minnesota. Justin Jefferson, though, he looks great. He looks awesome. Antonio Gibson versus Justin Jefferson. Who do you guys like this week?
Boy, that's a good question. I really. And I'm assuming this is a PPR league. I really like Justin Jefferson a lot this week. When doing the research, he's actually a start in the column as well. When doing the research for this week, the Seahawks are giving up 41.6 fantasy points a game to wide receivers, which is by far the worst in the league. They're giving up over 300 yards per game to wide receivers. Another thing that was interesting here is that they've allowed 9 top 25 weeks through 4 games. So now you have the Vikings, who have kind of a funneled passing attack where it's going through Thielen, and it's going through Jefferson, and then that Dalvin Cook's going to get his. This game should be at a pretty up tempo. Russell Wilson's going to put up points. This is an opportunity for the Vikings will have to speed it up. They're running plays at a pretty low rate right now. But we've seen Jefferson 2 weeks in a row over 100 yards. I think he's probably got the higher ceiling of the two players, and possibly the higher floor as well. I think I would go Jefferson of the two.
Yeah, if it's PPR, I entirely agree. If it's half PPR, I think that's where it gets a little more muddied. If you are in just a standard non-PPR league, I think you go Gibson, because that floor is not as good without PPR. But assuming it's PPR, I'd also go Jefferson. The Seattle defense, can't trust them against wide receivers at all. I mean, when you're worse than the Falcons in a defensive category, wake up. So go Jefferson.
And you guys have done a pretty good job there of, talking me into Justin Jefferson because of how bad, Seattle is. A favorable matchup for Jefferson. The only thing that I will say on the contrary is, PPR is a big deal of, it's a huge deal, of course, but, PPR, it's not like Gibson doesn't catch the ball ever. I mean, he's got 7 catches in the last 2 weeks. Last week, 4 catches for 82 yards. So he still can produce through the air and get you a few extra PPR points. Plus, he's the lead back, so he's going to have all those rushing opportunities, whereas Jefferson is only going to be able to, give you whatever he's able to convert through the air. So just to be a little contrary there, I will say Justin Jefferson by a hair, but I still really do like Antonio Gibson. The only thing that scares me a little bit is the fact that they're playing the Rams, and the Rams can either A, play down to their competition again, or B, go, wow, we played like crap last week. We play another bad team this week with a quarterback who's starting his first game. We're going to pounce all over these guys. We're going to hound them. And I could see that happening with the Rams, with that defensive unit. So that's the only reason that I am going to say Justin Jefferson over Antonio Gibson, but I still think Gibson produces plenty in that PPR format, as we've seen the last couple of weeks. And as Coach mentioned, Justin Jefferson is one of the wide receivers that we'll talk about more in detail here as we finish up the article. The other question that was asked to us by, and thank you, Orlando V14, for that question. Hopefully we helped you make up your mind a little bit there with that tough choice. The other one is from James Jacobs 333. He gets to start 2 of these players. And for me, I think this one is actually pretty easy. It's between Tyler Boyd, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Deontay Johnson. I'll just throw mine out there. Juju's the number 1 guy. He's been the more consistent guy. Deontay Johnson did have that one big week, but Juju's been putting up points every week. Obviously, they had to skip their game last week, so they are a bit of a game behind, but a full game behind Tyler Boyd. But Boyd has 28 catches on the season, whereas Smith-Schuster and Johnson have 31 combined. So Boyd is only 3 catches behind these 2 other guys. So that's huge in a PPR format. Again, you have to remember that the Steelers are a game behind. But I like Tyler Boyd a lot. I think you're locking him in one of those 2 spots no matter what. And then you're choosing pick your poison between the Steelers receivers. I think it'd be silly to lock in 2 Steelers receivers and pass up on Boyd. I don't know if you guys agree, but those are my feelings. So I would go Boyd and Juju Smith-Schuster. What about you, Trevor?
Same thing. I never like going 2 receivers on the same team. And for the Steelers game, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm really high on Eric Ebron for this game against this Phillies defense, or not Phillies, Eagles defense, wrong sport. So I'd see him taking the touchdowns possibly. So I think you go Boyd, and I think you go number 1 option in Juju.
I bet the Phillies could play just about as good of football as the Eagles have been playing though recently. What about you, Coach? Boyd, Juju, Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson. You're starting two of them. What do you got?
Yeah, so I think I would take Juju as the I would lock him in, especially against the Eagles, and then the other choice I would go with is Boyd, even though it is a tough matchup. Boyd has, I think he's number 6 in the league in targets to this point. He's Joe Burrow's number 1 guy, and he's going to get his. He will get at least 8 targets. Deontay Johnson's a tough sit based on his success the first couple weeks, and he left injured that third week there. But I think you got to go Juju and Tyler Boyd.
And Boyd, too, has only been able to find the end zone one time, but despite that, he's put up 20.2, 24.5, and 16.4 the last 3 weeks. Even without touchdowns, he's still producing. As you said, he's the number 1 target, the 6th most targeted, and it's obvious in his reception numbers. No less than 7 receptions each of the last 3 weeks, highlighted by a 10-reception week against Philadelphia in week 3 to go along with 125 yards. Last week, he put up 90 yards. So Tyler Boyd is producing, and Joe Burrow is looking for him. Maybe not as a bailout guy, but as a playmaking type of guy. Even though it's a tough matchup against Baltimore, I'm having a hard time sitting Tyler Boyd, especially when it would be 2 guys on the same team. If this was a different receiver, a different team, it might be a tougher choice with Boyd going up against Baltimore, but I just think you got to lock him in. And then, like we said, you're picking between Juju and Deontay Johnson. Juju has proved to be the more steady option so far this season. He has not been injured like Johnson. So I think for this week, it is Juju and Tyler Boyd. So thank you again for those questions from James Jacobs and Orlando. Hopefully we can field a few more questions here before the end of the stream. I know football starts soon, so we're going to try and move at a decent pace through the rest of these guys. And then I just have a few final names I want to throw out at the end. We talked a little bit about Justin Jefferson, so again, if you want to throw any other factoids out there, go ahead, or otherwise let's jump into CeeDee Lamb. I said last week, and I said, or it might have been Tuesday too, CeeDee Lamb playing himself into almost a must-start type of situation. He is leaving Michael Gallup in the dust. He's proving to be a very, very capable and very important part of this high-powered Dallas offense. He's got a really great matchup against the Giants this week. CeeDee is a no-brainer start for me this week. Coach, he is your top start in your article. Tell us a little bit more about CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Michael Gallup is the kind of the forgotten man now in Dallas. It's become Cooper number 1 and CeeDee Lamb's number 2 in targets. He's gotten 6 or more targets every game, and it's 7 or more in each of the last 3. And then with that, he had a 100-yard game a couple weeks back, and then a 2-touchdown game this past week. Giants defense is nothing special. And then the Cowboys defense has been so atrocious that every game turns into a shootout, and it becomes so they've given up over the last 3 weeks 39 to the Falcons, 38 to the Seahawks, and 49 to the Browns. So with that, I actually think this might be a intriguing game stack for daily fantasy. But I think that CeeDee Lamb is a great play this week, and I think that he's going to continue his rise. Like you mentioned, I think he might be must-start wide receiver 2 from here on out if he isn't already.
Yeah, I love Lamb. A lot of people coming into the season said, well, how is he going to do with all those options? The moment I saw they gave him 88, I knew it was go time for him, and he has proven it. Gallup has kind of gone to that wide receiver 3 against this Giants defense. With this Cowboys defense, that isn't going to stop anything. Definitely put him in because they're going to be passing for a long time. He's a great guy to start.
And I just keep ending up in these back into these corners where I have to start these players that I don't want to play. I am in a very deep 16-man with extended bench league, and I just really have no options here. So I do have Michael Gallup as my wide receiver 2 in that league this week. I think I'm going to get destroyed this week. I've also got Randall Cobb as my flex. I got Greg Olsen at tight end. Like, I'm playing in 2012, apparently, like 2010 fantasy here. So that could be a rough week for me. But I totally agree with everything you guys just said about CD. Totally living up to the expectations. Probably the breakout star and in the running for potential rookie of the year, depending on what maybe Joe Burrow and a couple other guys can do. But as of right now, with that really talented and really deep young rookie wide receiver grouping, CeeDee Lamb finds himself at the top of those rookie wide receivers right now. Justin Jefferson, the other start, I think we said plenty about him and about how bad the Seahawks have been against pass catchers. So go ahead, lock Justin Jefferson in as well. We are sitting Julian Edelman versus the Broncos this week. And outside of Cam Newton, I mean, who really has been a good start on the Patriots this year? I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head. I know Zach I don't know what he's still feeling about Burkhead. He had that one big week. I think he had a okay week last week, but I'm not starting anybody on this Patriots team outside of Cam Newton pretty much on a weekly basis anyway. But you've specified Julian Edelman as a sit this week. Dive a little bit deeper into Edelman for us here, Coach.
Yeah, Edelman's he's had a slow start to the season. He had a big game against the Seahawks in week 2, and then the last couple of weeks against the Raiders and the Chiefs, he's got a combined 5 catches for 60 yards. And then on top of that, you have Cam Newton possibly out with COVID this week again, which means you have Brian Hoyer and Jarrett Stidham out there. Don't like Edelman as a start this week. I think there's plenty of options that I would choose over him. And he's ranked, he's currently ranked somewhere right around that 25, 26-ish. But there's a lot of guys I would go quite a bit deeper with some guys that I think are better plays than him this week.
I'm not a huge Edelman guy. The guy I might be the highest on this entire year, especially after last week, isn't a guy that's going to be flashy or top 2 wide receiver, but Damiere Byrd, I hope I'm saying his name right, wide receiver for New England. He didn't play week 1 against Miami. Comparing weeks 2 through 4 against Edelman scored 35 and Byrd scored 31. And 25 of those 35 from Edelman were against Seattle. Against Seattle, Byrd had 9 targets. Against Kansas City, even with terrible quarterback play, 10 targets. He's the favorite guy from Stidham and Hoyer. And when Cam comes back, I expect him to continue it. He's soaking up the targets now. The only off game against Vegas when they really just had to run the ball more than anything else. And the biggest thing about him right now in Yahoo, granted it's Yahoo, he's only rostered in 4% of leagues. So if you're frustrated with the guy and you need a guy to stash on your bench, if Edelman gets injured, even without him injured, he's doing decent as a flex in deep leagues. If Edelman gets injured, this is a guy that you're going to want at least on your watch list by now.
And who's that again? Throw his name out there again.
Damiere Byrd. Damiere, Byrd, Byrd, Patriots number 10 receiver.
Okay. See, I mean, you're helping me out too. He was nowhere on my radar, just to be completely honest with you. The one kind of, not no name, but kind of backup Patriots player that I had been looking at last week was N'Keal Harry, and that's because he was super, super, super cheap in DFS, and I thought maybe I could squeeze him into a few lineups. Ended up passing on him, which I regretted because he actually put up 11.1 fantasy points last week, had a touchdown, 3 receptions. Maybe could have made the difference between me cashing and missing out on the money in a few different DFS lineups that I had. So Harry is another guy too who maybe if Edelman goes down or just, you need a deeper player from the Patriots, Harry and Byrd, take a look at both of those guys and see what you think of them. The other sit that we have after throwing the prettiest touchdown in the entire league last week, I would say. Jarvis Landry versus the Colts. You don't exactly want your wide receiver to be relying on passing touchdowns to get you points. But hey, on the occasion that it happens, it's always nice. Jarvis Landry is somebody that I've always loved because he's tough. He plays through injuries. He always has high pass volumes. He almost never drops the ball. I loved him even all the way back to his early Miami days. But what do you see this week coming off such a big Browns performance across the board? Pretty much everybody getting involved last week for the Browns. Austin Hooper finally came alive. What do you see this week against the Colts that makes you want to sit Jarvis Landry, Coach?
Yeah, so the interesting thing that you actually just hit on it too is that big week for the Browns. They put up 49 points last week. Of those 49 points, you would have expected Jarvis Landry would have had a big game, especially when he threw. Yeah, I agree. It was a beautiful touchdown pass going to his left, left-handed, just on a rope too. But
missile, just absolute missile. It was beautiful.
Yeah, spot on too, over a defensive back. I mean, it's pretty tight coverage on that pass still too. He only finished with 15 fantasy points last week. He was wide receiver 24. Looking at his game logs for this year, he's had a high of 6 targets in any one game, high of 5 catches, high of 61 yards. That's his only touchdown on the year. The thing that I don't like about him this week, or even this year, I think last week I wrote that if you had drafted Mark Ingram as a RB2, it was time to trade him away if you could get anything for him back in similar value. Jarvis Landry, if you have him as a wide receiver 2, I think whatever you can get for him, it would be good to maybe cash in now. He's got one other opportunity coming up next week. Well, so he's got Pittsburgh and Cincinnati the next couple weeks. The Colts defense has actually been tough against wide receivers. They're only giving up 20.5 fantasy points a game to wide receivers. And what's interesting is the Browns this year, last year they went from a very heavy wide receiver passing team to this year now they're running the ball 53% of the time, and that's actually an 11% jump over last year. We knew Kevin Stefanski coming in. That was the offense that he ran with the Vikings. It was very running back centric. And Jarvis Landry is he's settled into a role where there's just not enough balls to go around. The only bright spot I wrote for him too, or I guess I don't know if I wrote this, but the only bright spot for him might be that Nick Chubb is out this week, so perhaps he does get a bump in targets, maybe. But he's just not going to return wide receiver 2 value against the Colts defense this week.
And go ahead, Trevor.
Just real quick, even his floor is not super appealing for a flex, just because there really isn't any. So yeah, I would agree.
And I was going to say too, just because it pops in my head when you mentioned that Nick Chubb is out. D'Ernest Johnson, he's very popular, probably the most popular waiver pickup this week. If he's still available in your league, that means, well, one thing that means nobody in your league has been watching our streams, because I think all of us have been pounding D'Ernest Johnson and his name all week. But yeah, with Chubb being out, I think it boosts all of the pass catchers just a little bit. But I just wanted to throw Johnson's name out there as well. D'Ernest Johnson, definitely somebody you're going to want to consider, even just as a stash. I'm not starting him. I don't think anybody should, start him this week. It's going to be heavy Kareem Hunt, I think, until they actually know what they have out of this guy. But he's just another name I wanted to throw out there. As far as Jarvis Landry goes, like I said, I've liked him in the past. I've loved him in the past. This year, I'm glad I only have him in one league, because I think his role from last year has totally reversed. I think him and OBJ have totally reversed. Jarvis Landry got most of the number 1 looks. He had most of the touchdown catches last year when you compare the two. Baker was looking his direction more often. I think this year things have kind of flip-flopped. It's OBJ all the time. Well, not all the time, but it's mostly OBJ. They're drawing up plays for Odell Beckham. Baker's looking his direction more, whereas I think you said it perfectly, Coach. Jarvis Landry has settled into a role where he's not finding the end zone a ton, and he's not getting a high volume of catches. He's got 3, 4, and 5 in the last 3 weeks, but has not broken 50 yards since week 1 of the season against Baltimore. Without the points from that touchdown pass last week, he's only again at 11 points. So just really hasn't been doing a ton this year. And much like the Dallas offense, which, you know, it was the Dallas and the Browns that went back and forth and scored so many points, almost 100 combined points last week. I think much like the Dallas offense, there is a ton of talent on this Browns offense. There's a lot of options, and sometimes somebody's just going to get the short end of the stick. And this year, it seems to be Jarvis Landry so far. Again, Austin Hooper, I've been preaching how disappointing he's been wondering when he's going to go off. He's got more touchdowns this year than Jarvis Landry does. So Landry, I think is somebody that maybe you can trade away. Or if you have the spot on your bench, maybe stash him away. But I think in the upcoming weeks, he's just not somebody that you're going to want to lean on as a starter. So that wraps up the article, Coach's article. Again, you can find that at flurrysports.org if you want to go back over anything or read in depth what Coach wrote out. I just have a couple names that I want to toss at you guys, and then we can wrap up with any final thoughts or any final players that you have. And then we will get to watching the Buccaneers hopefully cover 3.5 tonight for my pocketbook's sake. Just a couple guys that I want to throw out there are two guys on the same team, Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson. I think Joshua Kelly, probably the start between these two guys if you are to start either one of them. Of course, we know Austin Eckler is out. And the Chargers have a big Monday night matchup against the Saints. Do you think either of these guys are worthy of a start in weekly fantasy? Would you take a shot at them in daily fantasy at all this week? Joshua Kelly looked like he had a ton of promise. Had a big first week, or maybe it was week 2. I can't remember, but he had one big week in there, and then kind of just been doing a whole lot of nothing these past couple weeks. I like him in the long term. I think he's got a bright future, but young running back, kind of performing like a young running back, in my opinion, as far as Joshua Kelly. Justin Jackson is very much a flyer, make or break type guy, or boom or bust type guy, excuse me. But with Austin Eckler out, do you guys see any fantasy value in either one of those Chargers backs?
I like Kelly. I think he's more likely to get, I think it'll probably be maybe a 65-35, 70-30 split, somewhere in that range. The matchup this week is tough. It's going to be tough going into New Orleans. It's always a tough atmosphere. They have a good run defense there. I probably will not go to either of them in DFS. Just because I don't think the upside is there this week. But I think you could do worse than starting Kelly as an RB2 in season-long leagues.
In daily, I think you stay off both of them. In weekly, I've said Josh Kelly, even on his good days, other than that one good day, he hasn't been effective, even as a change of pace guy. So I'm not sold on him, but he's definitely a guy you should have. But to play, unless you're desperate, a little bit of a stretch outside of a flex play.
And I would totally agree. It's just those two guys are available, or at least Jackson is available in almost every league. But Joshua Kelly's still available in a good amount of leagues too. But those two guys are both sitting at the top or near the top of the free agent running backs. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, especially with Austin Eckler still injured. Kelly may be somebody you want to take a shot on if you're in a dynasty league or some long-term type of league. I don't think it's going to be there for him this year, but I did like what I saw out of him early. I think he's going to keep getting better. I liked what I have seen of him in college. I think he's got upside in the future, but right now, week 5 of the 2020 season, I just don't think he's worthy of a start either. Michael Gallup, we already talked about. Pretty much pass on him unless you're a sorry sack like me, and you have to start him, or otherwise leave him on your bench. The last guy I wanted to throw out there as a confident start for me, and I want to know if you guys feel the same or if you think he's maybe a borderline, is Devin Singletary. People were kind of concerned after week 1 because Zach Moss looked so good. Zach Moss, the more powerful back, probably was going to get most of the goal line opportunities, but he really hasn't played much or hasn't done much since that week 1 game, and he hasn't played since week 2, and he's questionable again this week. Devin Singletary, on the other hand, has gone off pretty much 3 out of 4 weeks. 10 points, I guess, is not really going off week 1, but again, Zach Moss had that big week 1. He had 16.1 in week 3 and 18.7 in week 4 last week. He is playing against the Tennessee Titans, so that is, in my opinion, kind of a favorable matchup. I'm trying to find where or what they rank as I have the wrong roster up here, but the Titans, I believe, are ranked in the mid to low 20s against the opposing running backs. I like Devin Singletary. I like the Bills overall. I think he's gonna find the end zone this week and continue to find ways to get into the end zone. Only 1 touchdown so far, but again, he's making up for it in other ways. I mean, any one of those weeks, if you're getting 12 to 16 points out of him consistently without touchdowns, you tack a touchdown on there, all of a sudden you're up in the 20 range. I like him as a start this week. What do you guys feel about Devin Singletary?
So, in a bubble, I do like Singletary this week. I think he makes for a fine play. The only thing that concerns me is going back to what Trevor mentioned when we were starting to talk about the Titans. That game's on Tuesday, so it's always tough in the late games or the Monday night and now Tuesday night games if you have anything questionable or up in the air. And if this game, if you find out on Sunday afternoon that this game is now going to be postponed, you're kind of stuck then unless you have somebody play in the afternoon game. So for that reason, it's kind of a roll of the dice here as far as do you think that the Titans game is actually going to happen? Now that being said, in DFS, if you're playing a Thursday to or a Sunday to Monday slate, I guess it would be Tuesday now. The ownership on him is going to be pretty low, so he might be a nice tournament shot right there. But in season long, it's a tough roll of the dice. I personally am skeptical that the Titans game is going to go off as well. So I guess those are my thoughts on it.
And that's a great point. I got so busy. I got so in the weeds as far as stats and trying to come up with reasonings as to why I like him as a starter. I forgot, hey, this game might not actually be played. So, I mean, that's a great point there, Coach. Trevor, outside of the possibility of the game not happening on Tuesday, what are your thoughts on Devin Singletary?
In weekly fantasy, if Moss does not play a game, Devin Singletary is an easy start. He's not going to give you the running back 1 numbers, but I don't think anybody who has him is expecting him to do that. Running back 2, one heck of a flex too if Moss doesn't play. If Moss does play, I'd hold off on him. Daily fantasy, great start though. But for this week, I think probably we're going to get a positive test from the Titans probably within the next 2 days. I don't think if we're going to get a positive, I don't think it's going to be Sunday. And one more positive is going to end this game's chances. So I'd say don't even bother with them this week because it's just not going to be worth it.
So I guess if nothing else, it's some Bills food for thought as we move forward into the rest of the season. Last thing I'll throw out there on Singletary is, again, he's getting it done in solid, RB2 type numbers without even finding the end zone. And it's because they're involving him in the pass game. He's got 9 catches for 71 yards over the last 2 weeks. So on top of what he's been able to do on the ground, he's been involved in the passing game as well. So I guess just keep those things in the back of your mind as far as the Bills and Devin Singletary goes as we move forward in the season. That's everything that I had written down. Thanks a lot for all the personal help that you guys gave me this week, fantasy-wise. Is there anybody else that you want to touch on before we have our final thoughts and wrap up here?
For me?
Nope. I think we've gone over all of them for me as well.
All right, cool. For some reason, it felt like this stream kind of like flew by to me, but I look up and we're at like, well over an hour and a half here on this phone call. Haven't been live for that long, but it went really quick for me. I love these Thursday shows almost as much as my Saturday gambling shows. But those hold a special place in my heart. Otherwise, always have a great time with you two at Trevorland2 on Twitter, at Schroeder Coach, on Twitter for the two of you, at Senholes on Sport. Of course, follow at Flurry Sports. Follow Zach at Fantasy Flurry. And don't forget, check out monkeyknifefight.com. Monkey Knife Fight going to provide a ton of action across all different sports, but it's going to increase the excitement for you as well this weekend. A bunch of props. You can choose between a bunch of games, different contests to get involved in. Head over to monkeyknifefight.com. Sign up using promo code Flurry. You're going to receive $5 completely free just for signing up, and then a 100% deposit match up to $50. So put $25 in your account, you're going to be playing with $55. Put $50 in your account, you're going to be playing with $105 all the way across the board. monkeyknifefight.com, promo code Flurry. Follow us on Twitter, hit us up, ask us any final questions that you may have before Sunday rolls around. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. Those of you who have stuck around the entire time in lieu of Thursday Night Football, we're going to let you go now so you can enjoy a little Buccaneers versus Chicago Bears action. Trevor, Coach, thanks for joining me tonight. I will talk to both of you soon, and everybody enjoy your weekend of football.
Have a good one.